Melee Afflictions. A lot of you may easily dismiss this arcane, since there are better arcanes like Melee Influence in the play, and many more that is competing for that one single slot. Arcanes that don't provide much damage, they provide utility. Something like Melee Vortex provides 18 meters of grouping when it triggers, or Melee Crescendo where you can have permanent 12x combo, which is good for heavy attack oriented melee in Disruption mission. Even something that don't provide as much damage as Melee Influence like Melee Exposure, Melee Animosity or Melee Duplicate, they still serve a purpose in certain builds where they are demanded. How can even adding 6 additional status to the existing status on an enemy be useful in any cases? And that's where you are wrong. Before we get into the nitty-gritties of Melee Afflictions, you must finish the quest Jade Shadow first, which contains spoilers. If you have not, should you close this video immediately. After the quest, play the funny game mode that is Ascension, aka if defection is actually cool and engaging enough. Extract some modes, bring the egg to the elevator, power the elevator, do trick shots on the egg, and kill some sister if you picked up 3 sister beacons, and escort the egg to the extraction, rinse and repeat. After that, you get your hands on the Vestigial modes, which you can purchase the arcane for a cheap price of 10 per amount. Each run should net you over 20 of them. Should you get yourself a full arcane in 9 to 10 rounds. Now you get your hands on the arcane. Let's explain how the arcane works. If you read the description of Melee Afflictions, you will see that it will add 3 stacks of status to the existing status on an enemy if they are knocked off their feet by the melee itself. Now highlight that part, what counts as knock off their feet. There are 3 of them, notably lifted, knockdown and ragdoll status. You must at least have one of these to even benefit from the arcane itself. Heavy slams produce lifted, and some stances have lifted and knockdowns, even ragdolls in their stances. If you don't like heavy spam builds, should you pick a stance that can produce the 3 aforementioned status comfortably. With conditions out of the way, let's talk about how the game applies these 6 statuses. If set hits like from Clashing Forest, the second hit of Resolute Flurry's spinning attack, which has a force lifted status, it will additionally produce a hit that applies 6 more status to the enemy that gets tagged by that lifted status. If I had my Sentinel tagging that enemy with 2 electricity and 2 gas procs, if set hit that had him lifted hits, now the enemy has 8 electricity and 8 gas procs, which is exactly 6 stacks of status to the existing status. And you might think, that's all? It's kinda mediocre. What I told you just now is just the very surface level of the arcane itself. I'm not even done yet. Let's get into the real deal, shall we? Let's do the showcase with this build right here. No damage mods, only attack speed for quality of life. And you might ask, what's the big deal right here? Don't worry, I haven't shown my Warframe build yet. We will be bringing this exact Thermal Thunder build that is not well optimized for either nuke or buffing, just to show you something. If you want the proper ones, check the cards above, I guess. I now cast Thermal Thunder on this poor gunner, and I will spam this very move to trigger the arcane as much as possible. You might now ask again, what are you cooking? If your eyes are keen enough, you can see that the hit procs from Thermal Thunder itself is being preserved, and with each hit, 6 additional status kept being added to this poor gunner. And as the time goes on, the hit ticks are getting stronger and stronger, and they will eventually poof. Do you see the potential now? This is, in fact, The first intricacy of the arcane itself, the ability to taxi and inherit the set procs to its benefit. This arcane will drive the procs from other sources that is not on the melee itself to the melee itself. And though this does not scale with crits and base damage, but surprisingly, there is one particular mod that works, and I will explain it in the next intricacy of the arcane, and also one type of mods that works as well. This single perk of the arcane opens up insane amounts of synergy that is not even possible before the birth of this arcane. You can now taxi status proc from any abilities to your benefit. Remember Elemental Ward, Chroma's subsumable ability? Elemental Ward's Toxin variant allows you to have 35% reload speed and 35% universal base damage, and a small 5-meter aura that will inflict toxin damage to enemies around him that deals 5% of their total HP as damage. Seems OP to be honest. Nah, it's pretty bad. You need to be Rhino to even make this part of the ability shine. Still not good enough, but it allows some pick funny though. Now with this new arcane, you can make this part of the ability kills fairly well with constant increase in procs. Though still hindered by its small 5-meter AoE that has a slow apply speed, it is at least capable of killing heavy units. You still remember that one particular mod that I stated? That mod is none other than Melee Elementalist, or Elementalist mods again. Proc produced from the weapon also counts. If you put an Elementalist mod on your primer, say a Fury's Prime with an Elementalist mod, the DOT produced by a Fury's Prime will be increased by 90%. Say your melee with Melee Elementalist equipped, this additionally produced DOT will be increased by 90% again, effectively double dipping. There is also one particular type of mods that affects it as well, and that is elemental mods. Yes, they work as well, but it works similarly to an elementalist mod. Let me explain. If you use something like Toxin Ward, as you can see, the difference between no Toxin percent on my melee and 150% Toxin is as clear as day. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but what I stated earlier is mostly just the taxi part of the arcane. Where is the inherit? Did you notice this little white number that keeps going up and up each time I melee this poor little guy? The numbers seems peaceful here, like on the thermal build. The damage don't increase, or should I say, stagnated. But this particular showcase seems to not say so. As you can see, the numbers keep going higher and higher, and the rate of increase seems abnormal as well. You can go from just a few hundreds to something like a 10,000s in just a few spins. This phenomena is in fact the second intricacy of the arcane itself, exponential scaling per lifted with a catch. But what catch? When there is a soul DOT, the arcane works as intended, dealing 100% of the damage of the weapon or the ability that applies that status. As you can see, the damage are the same on thermal, on dark burst, and on my primer that gives only slash. It is very consistent, but it can go wrong very fast. What I found is that when there is 2 or more DOTs on one target, the scaling starts to fly. The difference between 2 DOTs and 3 DOTs is huge. The ramping speed between them is a whole different level. But in terms of how the exact number comes from, I have yet to map it out. This perk alone allows some melees that can consistently apply lifted to scale the damage really fast, to a point where the enemies will just die. Not even level cap goons can survive this. That additional hit will slowly deal more and more damage, but it definitely takes time to reach to that point unless... Don't know if you all know how melee influence works. Some of you definitely knows, but for those who didn't, melee influence, upon triggering the requirements for it, will spread known IPS status and all the status that is proc when the arcane triggers. Say this hit I apply both viral and electricity. Now melee influence will spread this electricity and viral to the enemies that is around 20 meters of where the proc occurs. This melee influence is counted as a separate hit from the melee itself. Instead of the traditional exponent double apply or double dipping, it is now triple dipping with Banes, or exponent triple apply, which is what I like to call. Now, do you remember that I said Melee Afflictions will produce an additional hit? Does this remind you of something what I said just now? Yes, this arcane quote-unquote triple dip with raw and seems to be subjected to the previous intricacy of reapplying even with just a sole DOT. Let's see how it affects Toxin Ward. To show you the proof, we will be comparing it with no raw and with raw. You can now clearly see the number jumps up in an abnormal way, with maps indicating that raw is in fact quote-unquote triple dipping. The steep abnormal increase of the number when raw is used seems to prove the previous theory right, but not the next theory I have found. Raw seems to not just quote-unquote triple dip, it seems to dip infinitely, though I'm not able to prove it with maths. But as you can see, the previous rule of exponential when there are more than one DOT starts to not apply here. Raw or Banes simply kickstart the exponential scaling, and with all aforementioned conditions for exponential scaling being applied together, this can become insanely broken in just a few hits. Just look at this ramping speed. Holy shit! Now with these 4 intricacies explained, let's make use of it immediately, shall we? I will be using the same Thermal Thunder build and Arca Titron with no mods. You might be saying, oh, it can't be this insane, right? No mods against level 165 Steel Puff Heavy Gunners? Don't panic, you gotta see it yourself. Yes, it is this insane. Surely this is only Thermal Thunder, right? Nah, Dark Verse can do the same as well. This is the true power of the arcane itself in the right hands. This is why this arcane is just broken, not in the upfront, but in the intricacies. A melee arcane once again being extremely or unholy levels of broken on Rhino. And that's Melee Afflictions explained to the best of my ability, and I still feels like there is so much more for me to explore, and I will leave that to the rest of you. There is so much more than what meets the eye. Yes, the 6 additional status procs might seem weak, but when you actually test it further, this arcane holds some of the most unique interaction with anything in this game. It seriously become my favorite arcane. Not because it is absurdly powerful, but how many possible synergy that this little arcane can go with. And this is what people like me cares about the most. I really had fun making this video, and I hope this video can open your eyes and change your mind on this arcane. I will be doing lots of build with this arcane, but that's for another day. See you all next time. Goodbye.